Advancements in the medical field are giving nurses faster, more effective results than ever before. They should expect the same from their education, too. Capella University's game-changing FlexPath format allows you to set your own deadlines and leverage your experience to move faster through your program. So the faster you move, the more money you save. When you're ready, we'll be here. Visit capella.edu for a trial course at no cost to you. Capella University. Don't just learn smarter.
Tune out with Nevia by Moen, the spa shower that offers double the coverage using about half the water, making it look, sound, and feel totally different. Learn more at moen.com/Nebia.
You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about sports in the state of Michigan?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, the show that provides research and statistics about all the Detroit and Michigan sports teams, whether fans like it or not, and detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts and truth that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no slappiness, no coddling, no pop culture, no conspiracy theories, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website, themichigansportstruthpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and like the show's 2 Facebook pages, one of them at Michigan Sports Truth, and the other created by Stables.network. Visit Stables.network's website, primetimewiththestablesnetwork.com, like Stables.network on Facebook, and follow Stables.network on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Stables Network. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them. And it is for every sports fan's own good because the truth is out there.
I'm Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith and Frank Vasner. Ed Smith, how was your week and how are you doing tonight?
Well, today, as of this week, obviously, with the primaries being yesterday, it's been very productive. A little bit at times exhausting, but I'm here through it all, and I'm ready for another great show.
Awesome. Frank, how about you? How was your week and how are you doing tonight?
Well, my weekend was pretty fun. I got to see a couple of people that I hadn't seen in a while, and spent the last couple of days working hard at one of my enterprise branches. Is where it was really busy, but you know what? At least putting money in my pocket, so can't complain too much, and I'm looking forward to discussing things with you gentlemen tonight.
Awesome. So we have a full plate of topics to discuss tonight, including stuff about the Lions, Tigers, the Red Wings, the Big Ten, and more. But first, our top story from ESPN, headlining ex-Michigan student Bo Schembechler knew of sexual assault. So this is going to be very long, so bear with me and listen if you can. A former Michigan student says the football program's most famous coach, Bo Schembechler, knew about the sexual misconduct then team Dr. Robert Anderson. The accuser, identified as John Doe EB-17, worked as a play-by-play announcer for football games during his time at the University of Michigan in the early 1980s. John Doe, who sounded like Michigan. You guys remember that? In a lawsuit filed in federal court Thursday morning, John Doe, EB-17, said he told Schembechler directly on 2 separate occasions that Anderson, who died in 2008, sexually abused him during an appointment to treat severe headaches. Schembechler instructed Doe to tell then athletic director Don Canham, but Canham took no action according to the lawsuit. Doe said at a news conference Thursday morning that Schembechler told him to immediately tell Canham. Doe said he does not hold Schembechler responsible for remaining silent. He said, quote, "I cannot blame Bo for not being able to come forward. This was Don Canham's job," unquote. Canham died in 2005. He is credited with reshaping the athletic department with innovative marketing tactics during his tenure from 1968 to 1988. Schembechler led the Wolverines to 13 Big Ten championships during his 21 seasons as head coach from 1969 to 1989. He also served as the university's athletic director from 1988 to 1990. He was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in 1993, and in 2014, the school commissioned what it calls a larger-than-life-size bronze statue of Schembechler, which now sits in front of the football team's practice facility. The former coach died in 2006. Anderson started working at the university shortly before Schembechler arrived and remained a physician for the football program, in addition to filling several other roles throughout his career at Michigan until he retired in 2003. He allegedly continued to sexually abuse his patients for another 2 decades after John Doe EB-17's complaint. Since this February 2020, hundreds of former patients, many of them athletes, have accused Anderson of sexually assaulting them during physical exams and other routine medical appointments. In interviews and court documents, Anderson's former patients say the doctor put his finger in their rectums for non-medical reasons, fondled or masturbated their genitals, and made an array of inappropriate sexual comments, among other examples of misconduct. John Doe EB-17's claim is one of 53 new lawsuits filed Thursday morning by attorneys Stephen Esty, Jamie White, and Michelle Simpson-Tugel. Among the claims filed Thursday, 25 of the plaintiffs are former Michigan football players. Others include high school athletes, university students, university employees, and university athletes from several other sports. More than 100 people have now filed lawsuits against U of M, claiming that the school had opportunities to stop Anderson's abuse and failed to do so. Schembechler is one of at least 10 university employees who allegedly were told that Anderson was sexually abusing athletes on campus. John Doe, EB-17, said he developed a close relationship with Schembechler due to his role as an announcer for the football team. He said he still considers Schembechler family and will defend that man until the day he dies. When John Doe, EB-17, started getting migraine headaches, Schembechler referred him to Anderson for treatment. Instead of treatment for his headache, the lawsuit says Anderson digitally penetrated his rectum. Doe said when he told Schembechler about Anderson's abuse, the coach was visibly angry. Doe said, quote, "I felt from the look on his face and from his actions that this was the first time anyone ever reported to him," unquote. And then, quote, "When I did go to Canham's office, his response literally was just to blow me off," unquote. Glenn Schembechler, Bo's son, spoke to ESPN prior to Doe's press conference Thursday and said that his father didn't hire Anderson, but, quote, "If Bo wanted to get rid of someone, he would have," unquote. The younger Schembechler said he is certain no one ever told his father about Anderson's sexual abuse. He said he knew of Anderson as an odd guy who was part of the program, but he did not see him frequently. Glenn said, quote, "I can tell you unequivocally, no one ever told Bo. Bo would have done something, Bo would have fired him," unquote. Several former athletes have said they also tried to raise concerns about Anderson and were ignored. Former gymnast Ward Black said he tried to talk to his coach, Newt Locum, about Anderson in 1968, but the coach quickly changed the subject. Former tennis player Kathy Kalahar said she told a university psychology counselor in 1974. Former wrestler Tad DeLuca said that he told his coach, Bill Johansson, in a letter in 1975 that he was required to drop his drawers every time he went to see Anderson, even for treatment of an elbow injury. DeLuca's concerns were also brought to the attention of Canham. Loken died in 2011. During an interview with the Associated Press earlier this year, Johansson said he had no memory of anyone claiming Anderson sexually abused them. An anonymous former track athlete said in a lawsuit that he told then coaches Jack Harvey and Ron Warhurst in 1976. A different track athlete said he also tried to warn Warhurst around the same time, and according to his lawsuit, the coach responded by saying, quote, "Deal with it, effer," unquote. An attorney representing Harvey and Warhurst said that both coaches denied that they were told about abuse by Anderson. The former runner who says he was told to deal with it is one of several plaintiffs who say Anderson masturbated him during medical appointments. A former medical student who filed a lawsuit Thursday said Anderson ejaculated himself while encouraging the student to feel free to join in before telling the student that he needed to collect a semen sample from him. An anonymous football player said in Thursday's filing that Anderson attempted to give him an erection as part of a physical exam in the late 1980s. That player said in his lawsuit that he informed then athletic trainer Russ Miller, but Miller did not take any action. Miller did not respond to a request for comment. He told police in 2018 that he recalls students asking him, quote, "He isn't going to be using his 2 fingers, is he?" unquote, before going to see Anderson and making crude jokes about other interactions with doctors. He said he did not think Anderson was doing rectal exams. He also described Anderson as an unbelievable teen doctor, which he's not, I may add. A pair of anonymous football players said in a lawsuit that current head athletic trainer and associate athletic director Paul Schmidt and another trainer identified only as Murph also knew about Anderson's abuse and regularly joked about the athletes who had to see Anderson and drop their drawers. Schmidt told police in 2018 that he never saw anything inappropriate in his 2 decades of working with Anderson and described the doctor as a personal friend. Well, I believe Murph is lying. Schmidt remains employed by the university and has not responded to calls for comments since he was named in the anonymous players lawsuit. In 1979, then Vice President of Student Life Thomas Easthope was told that Anderson was fooling around with the boys in the exam room. Easthope told police in 2018 that he fired Anderson from his role as the director of Michigan's University Health Service. Anderson did resign from that role in early 1980, but continued to work as a physician for the athletic department for another 23 years before he was fired. University President Mark Schlissel apologized this February to Anderson's victims and said, quote, "Our police found indications that U of M staff members were aware of rumors and allegations of misconduct during Anderson's medical exams," unquote. The school has hired the Wilmer Hale law firm to conduct an investigation into all claims about Anderson's abuse. A hotline managed by Wilmer Hale had received 394 unique reports as of late July, according to a university spokesman. The law firm is expected to release its findings to the public in October. University spokesman Rick Fitzgerald said Thursday that the investigation has been halted by a federal judge as part of the ongoing legal case. In a written statement, he condemned the sexual misconduct described in Thursday's lawsuit. He said the university has no information about the new specific allegations made against Schembechler and Canham. Fitzgerald said, quote, "At the University of Michigan, we condemn all sexual misconduct. This type of conduct is reprehensible, and whether it takes place now or took place in the past, it is unacceptable. We have great confidence in the Wilmer Hale investigation, which has been paused by the court. More than 50 former patients of Anderson have contacted Wilmer Hale and are awaiting a response. We believe the investigation should restart immediately," unquote. The university says it is developing a process to try to resolve all claims against Anderson out of court. Details of that process have not yet been shared with the public or with any attorneys who represent people who say they were abused by Anderson. Mediation for the 100-plus lawsuit filed against the school is scheduled to begin in September. So this is still developing, guys. So Ed, Frank, we're going to turn it over to Ed first, and then we'll turn it over to Frank. So Ed, when Schembechler was alive, he became one of the witnesses of Dr. Anderson's abuse scandal, yet he didn't step up to address it, but that was not his fault because nobody told him about it. This is also even more evidence about it. One question I may ponder asking is, did he need to address that scandal? I believe he did. I believe they did to him.
I believe
needed to do so.
Well, what I would say, I think the inevitable and the first obvious comparison that will be made to this will be with regards to the response or lack thereof that Joe Paterno had done in regards to the Jerry Sandusky matter at Penn State. Now, it seems there are some obvious and clear, while there are some similarities, there are some clear and obvious major differences, it appears to me. And when it comes to this matter, it seems that Schembechler had very little knowledge. It seemed on the surface they had very little knowledge of what Anderson had been doing until someone had told him. And if you look at the gaps in which apparently Schembechler had found out about this information, it appears as though that he was kept out of the loop, whether it be purposely or not, however you want to look at it. That may be a certain theory or scenario. The more so comparison with what Paterno had done or had not done was that Paterno had already full knowledge, been fully aware more than one occasion of what Sandusky had done and had been doing. So that's a stark difference for what we're seeing apparently from what we saw in Michigan and what we saw at Penn State and what we're seeing in Michigan. But obviously this revelation is not really too surprising when you think about it in terms of how, if there's all these instances, all these specific detailed instances of witness after witness after witness describing incident after incident after incident at this point in time, at this place, at this moment, it speaks to a more broader picture of yes, without a doubt, all this stuff more than likely did happen, if at least a hefty majority of it. In regards of what should have been done more, if you want to use that as a branch to say, hey, maybe Schembechler could have done a little bit more. Who's to say he would have done more if he knew more of the situation of at hand? his family has made statements saying that if Bo knew more, without doubt, he would have done something about it. Well, it's easy to say. I mean, and of course, everyone, even if you weren't a Michigan fan or not, you have those nostalgic, kind-hearted feelings about Bo, especially in lieu of his death and how he died in the years since then. We understand that. But there's also accountability that has to be maintained with any and all figures, whether it be public or private. There is responsibility that has to be maintained. And if in some certain instances that Bo Schembechler did not accomplish that to the highest degree, then he deserves some criticism of it. Now, should it be as full-blown and as full ravaged as what we saw Joe Paterno go through? No, in my opinion. Now, if you want to say that's me being a Michigan slap or I got on my amazing blue-colored glasses, so be it. But, from what I am seeing, that this is a very horrible and unfortunate situation all around, that while this is going to be a great stain for the university, I think they are taking some steps to address this fallout better than what we saw at Penn State or what we saw at Baylor, if you want to do comparisons. They're acknowledging that, yes, this did happen. We screwed up. We should have handled this and nipped this in the bud long ago. Now we need to do obviously there's damage control, but just talk and find some type of connection to bring this as much closure as possibly can. And like we said with Schembechler, I think, it's easier to say what we can't say, but again, here's the main component. Bo's not here to speak his say his side of the story, even defend himself, regardless of if any of these instances are true or not. Bo's not here to have his say on that, so we can't really have any definitive finality on that matter because Bo's not here to speak for himself.
That's true. So that was Canham's job, not Bo's. So Frank, any follow up on this?
Well, kind of along with something that Ed mentioned, he mentioned that Bo may have been kept out of the loop, whether that was intentionally or unintentionally. And Ed, I kind of have this suspicion that it may have been intentional because Bo Schembechler was the most iconic coach on the University of Michigan campus. He was the most respected guy. He always believed in doing the right thing. And because if he would have gotten full wind of this, then I fully believe that he would have gone through hell and back to make sure that Anderson had gotten fired and brought to justice. I will say that. I'll believe that, and I'm not even a Michigan fan. I'll say Bo would make sure that the right thing was done because I pretty much have read enough about him that he knew what to do, and I don't think he would have ever done anything wrong. Now, could there be something that comes out? I mean, yeah, that's possible, but right now, I'm going to say Bo did his part, whatever he could do, but I think he was having stuff withheld from him in the cover-up, and now this current administration, they're basically going through and they're finally saying, you know what, we got to take care of this. And I think there's going to be a lot more to come out come the rest of this month into September and even into October.
Especially,
True. I don't think the fallout's going to be as explosive as the whole fallout from Penn State and Jerry Sandusky, but I think there's going to be a lot of stuff brought to light, and I think and Don Canham, I know he was very well respected at U of M.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if anyone is going to essentially crash and burn for this, it's going to be his image, and I think he's going to be the one that has to pay the proverbial consequences, even though he has been deceased for 50 years.
Yeah, that is true. So that's it for this portion of the developing story. But we will await even more details and even more lawsuits to come in the Anderson scandal. So, speaking of the Michigan Wolverines, they and the Michigan State Spartans and the rest of the Big Ten have released its football schedule. It's going to be a 10-game schedule. Now, the Big Ten released its 2020 football 10-game schedule, which begins on the week of September 3rd, 4th, and 5th. The conference title game is set for December 5th. And by the way, the Michigan State Spartans have only 7 student-athletes tested positive for coronavirus out of 127 athletes and 50 staff members, which is 177 people total in the athletic department. So only 7 positive tests is a small number, but still it's an outbreak football defensive end Jacob Panashuk has opted out due to COVID-19 concerns. So there are those two. Now, before we get to the Wolverines and Spartans schedules, over 1,000 players in that conference have recently made demands to the NCAA about COVID-19 safety measures to improve a return-to-play plan called the Big Ten Unity Proposal. Yeah, the Big Ten Unity Proposal. A third-party group in charge of handling COVID-19 testing and enforcement of health and safety measures, that group wants a mandate for members of the athletics department to report potential violations of protocols and whistleblower protections for those who do. Players are also seeking a minimum of 3 weekly coronavirus tests, including one on the day of competition. The proposal included 2 weekly tests for high-contact sports such as football. Players also want a wide range of assurances and protections, including a ban on liability waivers, a medical red shirt for players who miss time because of a positive test, coverage of medical expenses incurred because of COVID-19, and a preservation of scholarships if the season is ultimately canceled. Pac-12 football players released a similar list of unity demands this past Monday and threatened to boycott their season if concessions weren't made by the NCAA and the conference. So that right there is clearly not quite yet official. Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that too. We'll have to keep an eye on everything.
From the sounds of that, it sounds like basically they're trying, the conferences, at least from the football perspective, they're trying to collectively bargain without being a union as much as possible.
True. And there's even more. Big Ten players didn't make a reference to a potential boycott, but urged a rapid increase in talks. The NCAA is awaiting a final decision on August 21st on whether to play fall sports or not. So all that being said, the Michigan Wolverines football schedule, we'll start with that. Saturday, September 5th, home against the Purdue Boilermakers. Saturday, September 12th at the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Saturday, September 19th, home against the Penn State Nittany Lions. Saturday, September 26th at the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Saturday, October 3rd at home against the Michigan State Spartans, the in-state rivalry game, ours, as we know. Saturday, October 10th is a bye week. Saturday, October 17th in Bloomington against the Indiana Hoosiers. And then this is surprising here, folks. Saturday, October 24th, the game in Columbus against the Ohio State Buckeyes. And then on Halloween, on the 31st, that's a Saturday as well, the Wolverines are against the Wisconsin Badgers at the Big House. And then Saturday, November 7th, home against the Maryland Terrapins. Saturday, November 14th is their second bye week. And then Saturday, November 21st at the Northwestern Wildcats. And then the Michigan State Spartans football schedule. Saturday, September 5th, home against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Saturday, September 12th at the Maryland Terrapins. Saturday, September 19th, home against the Northwestern Wildcats. Saturday, September 26th at the Penn State Nittany Lions. Saturday, October 3rd at the Michigan Wolverines, like I mentioned before. Saturday, October 10th is a bye week for the Michigan State Spartans, the same date the Michigan Wolverines had their first bye week. Saturday, October 17th for the Spartans, home against the Ohio State Buckeyes before they welcome the Wolverines. And then on October 24th, the Saturday, home against the Rutgers Scarlet Knights of the Spartans. And then on Halloween, they travel to Iowa City to take on the Hawkeyes, the Iowa Hawkeyes, that is. And then Saturday, November 7th, home against the Indiana Hoosiers. Saturday, November 14th is a bye week. And then Saturday, that's the same date the Wolverines had their second bye week, by the way. And then Saturday, November 21st at the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Now, times are yet to be determined, and we're not going to make the predictions way too early. But, we have to gather even more analysis if the season were to go on. So, Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go over to Frank. Ed, Frank was talking to me that there might not be a season, but keep in mind the Big Ten has to make some considerations first before making their final decision. Go ahead.
Yeah, now let's keep in mind with the possibility that there may not be a season. I'm going down with the fact that compared to what we've seen with the other sports in our country, such as basketball and hockey with the NBA and the NHL, the protocols and the measures they've gone to with their restart plan, so far so good, has had infinitely far better results than what we've seen out of MLB. And as far as the NFL is concerned, we're not even sure if they even have a freaking plan at this point. So if half of the head honchos of the big four sports at the professional levels don't even have a clue of what's going on with this, what makes you think Mark Emmert is going to have as close to a clear clue as to what to regards in terms of dealing with this scenario. Now, I've been thinking, if you can't find some type of neutral, it can't be, if you don't want to be a carbon copy of what the NHL and the NBA is doing, at least find some sort of neutral ground of where, hey, Big Ten teams are going to be playing in this area. SEC teams are going to be playing in this area. Pac-12 teams are going to be playing in that, and so on and so forth. Yes, it will be very much a bubble-like atmosphere, but it's still creating a containment barrier of sorts of, we're doing testing, we're doing distancing, we're finding out, if and when more cases pop up, how we're going to quarantine, how, the same protocols that we've seen the NBA doing, what we've seen the NHL starting to implement, and what we saw the UFC have been doing. What makes what's so difficult to having that available for our students? Apparently, right. If we want to be so hell bent on opening up our schools this fall, wouldn't it make sense though to make sure that our athletes and student athletes and all our kids are as safe as humanly possible? So there's that. If there's if there is a season, I want to talk about the impact of the schedule in terms of, for both teams at least. For MSU, man, they just get heavy hit. They just get heavy hitter after heavy hitter, and that's just the early portion of their schedule. In regards to how the football team has performed on the field the past couple of years, it's going to be quite something to see what their record will look like after those first 3 or 4 or 5 games alone. Now, as for Michigan, on the other hand, they get a little bit of an easier break ball. I would say though, look out, keep your eye out for not just Penn State, but also Minnesota as well. PJ Fleck has done an unbelievable job there. So the Wolverines will keep their eye out on that. And of course, the obvious big news, the Ohio State game moving from the end of the year to the middle of the year. Now, this was something that I remember being propped up before as used as a proposition way years back when there was discussion and talks about the inevitable realignment when Nebraska was in talks to join the conference. So it's quite interesting to see now, all these years later, that idea being taken up upon. But hey, I don't mind it. At least it saves the inevitable feeling of getting destroyed and humiliated at the end of the season. We're just going to move that to the middle of the season, so that way, we can feel better about our season getting ended much earlier than what we usually have been used to.
Very good information as always, Ed. Frank, this is your chance to explain why there might not be a season. I believe you're probably going to agree with what Ed said, so go right ahead.
Well, like you said, I do agree a lot with what Ed is saying. I mean, from a schedule standpoint, let's say that I'm wrong and the season miraculously ends up happening. Michigan State, I mean, I'm a Michigan State fan here, but all I can say is yikes. They have a murderous schedule. I mean, personally, I'm not thrilled about having them going to Ann Arbor in consecutive years, especially when it's Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State all back to back to back, even though there's a bye week thrown in there. But that's not a good way to get Mel Tucker acclimated to the Big Ten. And plus, given the fact that they are recently coming off of a 2-week stretch where they have the team shut down because of players and staffers testing positive for COVID, that's not really going to be a lot of time for Mel Tucker to install the entire offense in, get everything in, and have them being ready to go. And I think that's really going to hurt them. I mean, Michigan schedule-wise, it's a little bit easier, but I mean, they have to go to Minnesota, that's going to be a tough one. At least you get Penn State at home. Road trip to Ohio State in October, which from a traditionalist standpoint, I think that's kind of stupid, but I digress. And plus, you got Wisconsin, and right after that, that's not an easy stretch either. But point being, why I think this season won't happen. The first is the way the schedule is set up. It's my opinion that it seems like Kevin Warren, the Big Ten commissioner, just decided, you know what, we're going to throw a bunch of these games randomly, and we really don't care where they fall. And because all the traditional end-of-season rivalry games, I know that Indiana and Purdue is still at the end of the season, but the rest of them I don't believe are. So we'll see. So it's basically like, you know what, we'll just give people hope that something's going to happen, and we secretly know it's probably not going to. And here's other reasons why I don't think it will. The University of Connecticut, who happens to be a football bowl subdivision school, has canceled their season completely. And as I said to both of you gentlemen, I believe that is the first domino to fall, and we're going to see others that follow suit. Also, you have to keep in mind this coalition of Big Ten athletes that's formed and all their demands. I mean, they're not saying that they're going to boycott yet, but given their list of demands, and let's say that a lot of the higher-ups at these universities decide to say, you know what, we don't care, we want you on the field, go do your job.
That would not be professional.
Saying, yeah, it wouldn't be at all. And I think they're
how ironic of them of that phrase, do your job.
Yeah, I get that one, Ed. And I could end up seeing a boycott of it. Now, another thing, too, players opting out. Here's a couple of names of players that have opted out that I consider stars in this conference. Rashad Bateman, a wide receiver from Minnesota, and Micah Parsons, a linebacker from Penn State.
We'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, they're off. Well, Parsons has declared has decided, you know what, I'm not going to play because I don't want to risk catching this or jeopardizing my chances of being drafted into the NFL, because I believe he's going to play on Sunday. He's one of the best linebackers in the country. The same can be said for Bateman at the wide receiver position. I believe you could say he's the best wide receiver in college football, not named Jamar Chase from LSU. So he's basically saying he wants to be prepared for the draft. Jacob Ponashuk from Michigan State is a little bit different of a story. He's not as big of a name or big of talent, but he's still a starter. But he has a redshirt year, and he just says, you know what, I just want to protect my own health and well-being, which I'm not going to rip him for that. That's his decision, and I respect it. But I think you're going to see more of these guys that are going to follow suit. Let's say Rondale Moore from Purdue decides to follow suit. And then the next thing you know, Justin Fields from Ohio State, he decides, I'm not playing. I want to be ready to go for the NFL. If all these big names keep opting out, who's going to be left to play? The product is going to be so watered down, I don't even think it's going to be worth doing anything. And to be quite frank with you guys, pun not intended, I think they're going to end up pulling the plug probably in about 3 weeks' time, because you're seeing the Division II and Division III say we're not going to have fall sports. And you're seeing the UConns, that domino has fallen already, and I think there's going to be more to come. And I know people say, well, what about money and stuff? Well, you're not getting any money from ticket sales because no fans are going to be at games. I mean, advertisers, are they going to want to pay for something that people
even during a pandemic? The fans?
Yeah. Nobody's going to be there. And also, let me add this to the crowd that likes to say, oh, well, these guys are healthy, they'll be fine.
That's
first off,
cocky.
Eduardo Rodriguez, pitcher for the Boston Red Sox, he contracted COVID. He previously had a clean bill of health. He had no pre-existing condition. He had no family history. And now he has cardiomyopathy, which is a swelling in the margin of the heart, and he's not going to be able to play baseball this season, and his career is seriously in jeopardy.
Yikes.
And there was actually an offensive lineman from Indiana, whose name escapes me. He ended up contracting COVID pretty severely, I might add, and they thought that he was probably going to die as a result. Thankfully, he did not, but he's now got some heart issues as well. So is it really going to be worth these guys going out? I mean, look, I know it's not highly likely. I'm not saying that if they catch it, they're going to die, but, there's things that are coming about this, and I know the percentages are kind of small, but I think you have to consider how much of a loss is too much. And I think we got to look after the well-being, and the NCAA, if they have any common sense, they've got to do the same thing, too, and say, you know what? We've got to look after the well-being of these athletes. Otherwise, we're going to have bigger problems down the road. The right thing to do would be just cancel the season. Do I want college football to be canceled? Absolutely not. Nobody wants to not have a season. And because football is one of America's pastimes. But in reality, I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, all the Big Ten Conference has to do is just listen, especially at the top with Commissioner Jim Delaney and stuff like that. Kevin Warren.
Delaney's not the commissioner anymore. Yeah, Kevin Warren is not the commissioner.
Okay, Kevin Warren. Thank you very much. My apologies. But all he has to do is listen. The rest of his conference commissioner's office staff and such, and then we'll see how it goes from there. But you got good points. It might not. The season might not even happen at all. Understandable, and neither might the MHSAA football season until like the spring or something like that, which is kind of surreal to me, at least personally. But anyway,
Taylor, if I may interrupt, I'm also in the camp that doesn't think there's going to be a football season this fall, and I actually collaborated on an article on a blog I write for about that, and I'm kind of getting a mixed reaction. I mean, there are several coaches and school administrators who will agree with me and say, yeah, this isn't going to happen, and they've said they don't really like the way that the MHSA is handling it, but that's another story. And then there are those that say, well, they're working as hard as they can. Well, I'm not so sure they are, but I'll stop right there and I won't ramble on further.
Okay, so we got to get to the TMSTP Story Vault segment. From Jeff Moss of the Detroit Sports Rag on January 3rd, 2018, it's about the Lions. Headlining, Jim Caldwell is not a hot commodity. Back in 2014, when the Lions hired Jim Caldwell as their new head coach, Moss writes, I made the argument that nobody else in professional football was made that mistake. If not for Martin Mayhew and Tom Breath Mintz Luan, the Reverend Jim was never getting another top gig as long as he lived. I wrote that this was a cataclysmic decision and the team would never win in the postseason with this horrific in-game manager. I was so apoplectic about the comatose wonder coming to town that I had my image editor Photoshop William Fredo Ford Sr. into a casket, this caused the Lions to call the cops on me, and the rest is history. 4 years later, I was proven correct. The Lions won absolutely nothing of consequence under Caldwell during 4 years of Matthew Stafford's prime, during which he remained incredibly healthy, and now they are back in the market for a new coach. Many in this town still think Caldwell did a good job, even though they agreed with his dismissal. They keep harping on the fact that Caldwell had the best regular season win percentage, 563, may I add, in team history during the Super Bowl era, which is the equivalent of being the hottest girl attending Motor City Comic-Con. I mean, going into Wednesday night's game, the Pistons had a win percentage of 571 this year, and barely anyone in town knows the team hasn't relocated to Las Vegas. Others continue to claim that Caldwell was given a raw deal and was forced out by an angry racist fan base. All this ignores the fact that 5 teams other than the Lions have a coaching vacancy, and there isn't one whisper that any of them are interested in Caldwell. But it gets even funnier than that. Today, ESPN polled 45 football analysts, their top 5 available head football coaches. The criteria was basically anyone on earth who is not currently an NFL head football coach was eligible for a vote. Surprisingly, Jim Harbaugh won this poll. I guess the 45 analysts either didn't watch one Michigan game this year, or they are just really impressed by draw plays on 3rd and 12. And not only did Harbaugh get the most votes, it was pretty clear cut. Jim Caldwell tied for last on that list with 1 fifth-place vote among the 45 panelists. Caldwell got fewer votes than Rex Ryan, for goodness sake. Furthermore, he got fewer votes than 2 assistant coaches on his staff in Detroit, including one guy who has been arrested twice, once for a drunken home invasion. Caldwell even received fewer total points than the high school coach who never punts. And finally, Jim Caldwell received fewer votes than a woman. Yep, San Francisco 49ers seasonal assistant Katie Sowers ranked slightly higher on this list than the sleepy preacher. Anyway, the Lions' next coach, Matt Patricia, ranked 8, which is ridiculously low, but whatever. At least he didn't tie Ed Reed. If the in-league chatter for the 5 non-Lions openings and this poll are any indication, Caldwell is going to have plenty of time for Bible study and real estate investments for the duration of his lifetime. I cannot believe this guy lasted 4 years in this town. Actually, yes, I can. So that was short and sweet. Now, as always, we're gonna go to Ed and then we're gonna go to Frank. Now, granted, Caldwell got the Lions to the playoffs 2 times in his 4-year tenure as their head coach back then, but they still didn't win a single playoff game through that entire span. We know that, of course, and he wasn't a smart head coach, considering one fact that he kept forcing his special teams unit to punt at around the opposing team's 40-yard line. Also, if you guys look at the long list of coaches that had more votes than Caldwell, that's a ton of them. 45, yeah, which, as Moss mentioned, including a female head coach. That has to be so embarrassing. Ed, take the floor.
In terms of Jim Caldwell, I have made no bones about it. In terms of his lack of mid-game adjustments, to his inopportune moments to really show, on the exception of one instance, I think it was against the Eagles, where there was a fumble recovery, and he showed such a display of emotion I've rarely, if ever, seen from him. Other than that, he's been, as Jeff Moss would say, comatose Caldwell. So aside from that, the lack of in-game adjustments, the apparent lack of fire that you want to see in your head coach that shows and displays leadership, amongst other things, I called for Caldwell to be gone in his last year. And when they failed to make the playoffs, he knew what time it was. So, granted, his replacement has not done better, obviously, but I just don't like the revision. I don't want there to be any revisionist history about, we were so much better with Caldwell. Yeah, maybe record-wise, but guess what? You still didn't do Jack you-know-what.
In the playoffs.
Exactly. Or to borrow a phrase from Jim Mora, you didn't do diddly poo.
There you go. Frank, any follow-up on this?
Well, I pretty much agree that Caldwell was not cut out to be an NFL head coach. And I know when he got fired that there was people saying, the Lions are being ardent racists for getting rid of him because he had a great win percentage and he's the only black guy that gets fired. Get out of here with that. I mean, look.
People seem to forget that he was carried first by the Ravens defense and then by one of the 2 or 3 greatest quarterbacks of this generation. But I digress.
Well, Ed, you're absolutely right. So, that was probably one of the dumber opinions about him. The Lions being considered ardent racists for getting rid of him. He was not a good head coach. Plain and simple. I mean, yeah, he won games, but he basically just beat up on subpar competition. And when it came time to put it up against the big boy, what did he do? He decided to take his typical Sunday afternoon nappy nap and not do anything.
I mean, for goodness sakes, he had a chance to go 16-0, staring him in the face. His players wanted him to do it, and he takes him out the game. He takes his starters out midway through the game.
Wow. Yeah. Jeez. Holy smokes.
And then to put the cherry on top, they go on to lose the Super Bowl that year anyway.
Oof, baby.
Oh, yes, I do remember that. For anyone listening, Ed's referring to the 2009 season when he was with the Indianapolis Colts, and he decided, you know what, let's not worry about going 16-0. You need to keep momentum going. I know the Colts got the Super Bowl, but they also lost to the New Orleans Saints. But that's another topic for another time. And also, look, I know his replacement, Matt Patricia, hasn't been any better, and yeah, that's going to get the Lions are ardent racist crowd going, well, you know what? Was anybody going after Jim Caldwell seriously for a job? I'll hang up and listen. Oh, that's right. Nobody brought him in. Nobody brought him in for a head coaching job. Heck, I don't even think he got brought in as a water boy.
Oh, boy.
If he was so coveted, his behind would have been snatched up the moment he was let go. He wasn't. That's all. Exactly. All that tells you. That's everything that tells you right there.
Exactly.
He must have secretly announced his retirement from the NFL completely.
I don't know if he did that, but
here's the difference. Instead of D'Antonio doing it from a tweet, he did it from a DM.
Wow. There you go.
I don't know if it went that. I'm not quite sure about that, but who knows?
Yeah, we were just joking around. So
I know.
Even at the Michigan Sports Truth, we would have good or bad jokes, kind of like 5 points vids, right?
Absolutely.
Sports facts, bad jokes, right? Get it?
Of course, you got to bomb every once in a while.
Yeah, definitely. That's part of our show. Definitely. So, speaking of the Lions, defensive back Javon Pierce suspended 3 games for violating the NFL's substance abuse policy. He was out for the entire season with a severe injury. Something's telling me they might release him, guys.
Yeah, I understand the whole excuse, say I'm recovering from a whole injury spiel, but in the case of at least Martavis Bryant or what we saw from Josh Gordon, the Nate Dogg lyric of smoke weed every day does not apply in this situation here.
No, absolutely not. And then Matthew Stafford, the media said he tested positive, but then yesterday, he prior to this, he had a false positive test, so he was taken off the list. And now Kenny Golladay is now activated from the COVID-19 list. But Matthew Stafford, his false positive test, that's why his wife, Kelly Paul Stafford, went after the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, we got to say thank goodness for Matthew Stafford and his family, because they've already been through enough as is over the past couple of years between the wife getting brain surgery and Stafford's consecutive seasons being cut short due to back injuries, and now this pops up. Add on top of the fact that they have children at home, and Kelly just gave birth to another child just not too long ago. So all that underplay would cause a lot of stress no matter what status you are. So I don't blame Mrs. Stafford for expressing herself, because she needed to get that out. She needed to vent, but also bring awareness to, hey, this wasn't just the case with my husband. She's bringing up the fact that other players apparently had other false positive tests as well. So if anything, hence why she tagged the NFL as multiple times as she did. This is a call to arms to the NFL to, hey, listen, fix your stuff, fix your crap, because this is not working at all. She mentioned, some of the things, some of the adversities she has had to gone through, what their children have had to gone through at school as a result of this news popping up, and I think you gotta feel some type of sympathy, because from what I can tell, they were not being some of these knuckle dragging idiots that were like, no, I'm not going to wear a mask. What's going to happen to me? They seemed to be the Staffords, from what I could tell. They were doing as best as they possibly could to follow this, as evident by the fact that Matthew himself had 2 negative tests before this false positive even came up, and then the subsequent negative tests after that. Just confirmed, what Kelly and probably knew all along, that there's no conceivable way that Matthew could have gotten this in just such a short time span. Well, I would have to say, though, in a slight disagreement, that there is often a chance, or often the case, where even if you're asymptomatic as Matthew himself is or appears to be, you can still get this at any point at any time. So even though, thankfully, this was just a hiccup, have proven not to be the case, this should still be a cautionary tale that, even if you are still practicing as safe a social distancing as you must, and wearing masks, and washing your hands and whatnot, you can still get this. So it's not a game when it comes to this disease. We've even discussed and described to you, the listener, within this hour, the effects of what this disease is having and the long-term effects this virus will have if it catches you. So still, please, we are all advising you, keep yourself safe as much as you can.
Yeah, wear a mask, wash your hands, and socially distance yourself. Yet there are people still on social media commenting on the 9 and 10 News Facebook page's post that the coronavirus is about the same thing as the common cold. Wrong. All over the place.
Tell that to the people in Florida and Arizona and California and Texas right now.
And tell that to Eduardo Rodriguez of the Boston Red Sox.
There you go. Yeah, tell it right to their faces. If they don't understand that, well, we don't feel sorry for them if it hits them. And then there's Geronimo Allison, wide receiver, former Green Bay Packer, with the Lions opting out because of a newborn child, which has nothing to do with COVID-19. Thank you very much. And then got former CMU Chippewas football wide receiver Antonio Brown, mind you, being suspended 8 NFL games after his retirement. The investigation is still ongoing for even more mischief, which could lead to even more punishment. Just want to throw that out there. And then you got the Tigers splitting their series against the Kansas City Royals. And then after their 5-3 loss and then losing 2 of 3 to the Cincinnati Reds, which they've beaten twice out of 3 times in the opening series in Cincinnati, but couldn't get it done at home. And then they had their Cardinal series, that home set, entirely postponed because 13 Cardinals people, 7 players and 6 staff members, testing positive for COVID-19. But for the Tigers' end, according to Evan Petzold of the Detroit Free Press, the Tigers have avoided COVID-19 well thus far. And he wrote an article about it. He did the research, and it proved it. And then finally, you got the Red Wings loaning their top draft pick, Moritz Seider, to Adler Mannheim in Germany, which is almost the same situation as MLB's alternative training sites compared to the minors. So this is more like minor league hockey overseas rather than just an alternative training site, which is better than MLB's alternative training site. So there you go.
Yeah, and I think Seider being loaned to Germany is just so he can actually play in September and October and November, because from everything I've kind of heard, the NHL season won't get going until early December. So rather than just having him sit around in September and October and wait for training camp to roll up in November, he can at least get a little bit of game action in and make up for lost time. And when the season starts, they bring him back to North America.
Yep, and that is it for that. So we don't have time to go over the national coronavirus headlines. Not all of them. Just the deadline for NFL players to opt out is Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern sharp. Now, MLB has already approved 7-inning doubleheaders and stuff. Rosters reduced from 30 to 28. The NBA's second bubble, unlikely, but 0 tested positive out of 343 players. Again, same with the NHL. So those are the coronavirus headlines, and now we go to the closing statement. We'll give you 1 minute each. Ed, we'll start with you as always. 1 minute closing statement. The floor is yours.
The closing statement, again, to reiterate, to piggyback even further on what I had mentioned before briefly in the segment regarding Matthew Stafford. Even though the cases in Michigan are lower, thankfully, and are as low as you can be compared to the rest of the nation, people are still getting sick. People can still catch this. People are still dying from this. So do whatever it is you can. Even if you don't like the whole wearing a mask thing, if it's not to protect yourself, at least protect the people around you. It may not just be someone you dislike. It may be your friend. It may be your family member, someone who's close to you that could get this. So at least do them a favor. Put on the damn mask, wash your hands, and shut up about it.
Yeah. Quit bitching already, people. Frank, 1 minute closing statement. The floor is yours.
On my closing statement will be something that I've said here before, and I'm going to say it again. The NHL and NBA had another round of COVID testing, and both leagues came back with a big, fat zero for positive tests. I'll say it again. Gary Bettman and Adam Silver deserve a tip of the cap and a round of applause for getting it right with the bubbles. I just wish the NFL could do something similar. It doesn't have to be just one bubble. Not to mention the NCAA. Yeah. I mean, the NCAA would be tougher, but the NFL, I think they could possibly do something. The problem is you got to plan this out ahead of time, and the NFL doesn't have a plan, and because Roger Goodell's a joke. That's all I'll say about that.
And a final tag on to this, who would have thought that the words Gary Bettman and getting it done right would ever be uttered?
Right.
Preach, Ed. Preach.
Yeah, and my closing statement, speaking of Gary Bettman, I hope he gets my message about my 4 NHL division alignment concepts. Even now with the Seattle team having its new nickname, the Kraken, which I congratulate them for. And hopefully the NCAA imposes COVID-19 regulation rules for each conference, just to make sure players and the schools have healthy seasons, whether it's fall, winter, or spring, and especially with no fans. So that's my closing statement, gentlemen. Excellent job as always. We'll talk next week. If there's any local, state, or national business that is interested in sponsoring the Michigan Sports Truth podcast on Staples.network, please contact the network executive producer Mark Mancini by email at mancinisports@yahoo.com. We'll be back next week. For Ed Smith and Frank Vasner, this is Taylor Phillips signing off. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Bon appetit. Hit him with a hind. We rest our case. Stay safe.
Save big money in your next project with 11% off everything. Right now at Menards. Over 120 in-stock Sylvania LED bulbs are 11% off. Sylvania LED bulbs last up to 11,000 hours and use 85% less energy than 60-watt bulbs. Pick up a 4-pack for $4.89 after 11% off. Start saving today with 11% off everything. Prices are good until August 22nd. Savings are a mail-in rebate. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Save big money at Menards.
It just doesn't feel like summer without an ice-cold Coca-Cola in your hand. Stop by your local convenience store today and grab a 20-ounce bottle of Coca-Cola or Coca-Cola Zero Sugar. Or pick up even more delicious refreshment with a 20-ounce bottle of Diet Coke, Sprite, or Fanta. So no matter how you soak in that summer sun, at home or on the go, grab an ice-cold Coca-Cola today and enjoy.